In the last video for this project, I had to cut out a few important pieces of chassis so that the new engine and transmission would fit. Now that it's all mounted up, it's time to fix the frame. With the car on sawhorses for easy access, my improvised lift can't reach the engine anymore. I drilled a hole in the ceiling for an eye-hook and put it through a board set across two roof trusses. This gave me a point roughly overhead to winch against. The holes that I wildly hacked into the frame were pretty irregular, so I squared up the bottoms and made a template to make the front edge consistent on either side. I came up with a cardboard template in two parts for the patch. The line where they meet marks where to bend the cutout. When bending the steel, I hammered against a piece of wood to distribute the force over more area. Just hammering on the steel would leave marks and probably a wavy edge. About to stretch the limits of my welder's reach here. There was a small gap at the end, so I fixed it with my favorite problem-solving skill. This square tube will be the new Crossmember. Optimally, it would be directly in between the suspension towers for maximum strength. This is probably why the original was in that place. Now the engine is in that place, and the crossmember has to go in front of it. This is also where the lower control arms mount, and the sizable stack of shims under one side leads me to believe I might have to adjust them someday. Why the manufacturing tolerances are so loose as to require this, I'm not sure. I guess in the 70s giving a fuck hadn't been invented yet. In any case, I can't entomb the nut inside a welded tube, so I decided to make the crossmember bolt in. In order for this to work, the bolts have to provide a whole lot of clamping force. This tube would be crushed by that force on its own, so I drilled the holes large enough to accept reinforcing tubes. They will take up all of the compression force. File's just not doing it, so I'm going to use this reamer. Problem is, I have nothing square drive, so I'm going to have to improvise. I didn't add any filler metal when I welded these tubes in, so it left some ugly low spots. Luckily, they'll be hidden under the car, so I don't care. So, I'm just realizing that these funny bumps in the frame are not supposed to be like that. Clearly it was run into at some point because the front end is all fucked up, but I guess I didn't notice at first because it's like the same on either side. But I'm going to have to fix that before I put in my crossmember tabs. The vertical part of the frame was buckled in as well, so I tacked on a washer to pull it out with. I fastened the turnbuckle to the washer in the opposite side of the frame. I also had to wedge a pipe in between the frame rails, otherwise they would bend towards each other and the dent wouldn't pull as effectively. Close enough. These are the 1/4 inch tabs that the crossmember will bolt to. Since the frame is still somewhat damaged and inconsistent, I put everything in place to mark each tab's location on the crossmember when butted against the frame. Even if the frame was factory fresh, something tells me it wouldn't be the same on either side anyway. Using those marks, I clamped the tabs to the tube and match drilled the holes individually. Despite my fixturing, the holes in the crossmember are not identical on either side, or even front to back, so there was no interchangeability. I guess you can only ask so much using woodworking tools on metal. I welded a pair of quick caps over the original crossmember stubs just so they don't collect water. Now, originally I was going to use these pieces of the steering rack mounts to align some of my tabs, but turns out they're neither vertical nor the same on either side, so they're going to have to go. So as stubbornly as this piece was holding on, the opposite tab snapped off with like the first bend. It wasn't even rusty, just a shitty weld from the factory. Good thing I didn't go ahead attaching things to it. One of these days it'll break. Ah! God damn it! How the fuck is this still on there? Welding on the crossmember tabs was probably the worst part because it required welding under the chassis. Tight spaces make some people anxious. That's called claustrophobia. If I could put a name to my condition, it might be something like fuck this shittia, because tight spaces make me angry. Alright, I've been avoiding doing this patch for some time now because unlike the other side where there was plenty of clearance and I could just kind of continue this flat plate up until the end of the hole, on this side there is a boss on the transmission that is protruding into that area. So there's going to have to be like a little cove to accommodate that, plus a little bit of movement since this is all on rubber mounts. Now, obviously this frame is mostly going to be in bending with the weight of the body and the driver and passenger pushing down on it. And a little cove right there is going to provide it a perfect little place to buckle. So I'm going to have to reinforce that. And what I'm thinking is I'm just going to bridge it with a piece of plate on the inside. And that will prevent the frame from collapsing so easily in that direction. I marked the location of the boss for future reference. With the engine lifted back out, I cut and peeled back a few more inches of the frame. Oh shit. Ground away those marks. The welding torch didn't really fit in the space that it needed to, and I wasn't getting good welds, so I swapped the shielded gas regulator for a dual setup. One sends gas to the torch like normal, and one sends it through this tube and copper pipe I set up. With the extra shielding gas, I could weld far enough away to maneuver the torch. Looks like trash and smells like trash. Still, it was pretty ugly, and if I hadn't already started before I thought of it, I would have cut a slot in the underside of the frame and done a plug weld. I made a patch just like the first one and cut a piece off the end to turn around and use as the cove. Pretty much everything about this side was sloppier than the first because I had more joints to work around. I gave up using the TIG pretty quickly because of the large gaps everywhere, and switched over to the MIG, making one tack at a time like a barbarian. It looks kinda messy, but I did what I had to do, and I don't think it sacrificed any rigidity. I think I'm going to call that good for one video. Got all the big holes plugged up. Got the cross member in. Still going to have to figure out how to remount the steering at some point, but I think I'll save that for next time. Also kind of glossed over this body mount that I fucked up getting the body off, but you don't really need all those anyway. So as usual, I don't really know when I'm going to have the next step done. Looks like I'm not going to make it to the Woodward cruise like I had hoped initially. The whole COVID situation kind of got in the way. I haven't been spending as much time here. So next time I might start prepping the actual engine that I'm going to put in this with the mechanical injection pump on it. And I measured for a drive shaft. Maybe I'll swap in the proper differential too, and maybe I'll even throw in the steering mounting into that. So, see you next time. Ow! Fuck! God damn it! You didn't see that, but I hammered my knuckle against the frame.